Live, 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 live. What's up, everybody? I'm doing good. How are you? Good, man. Is that a question? What happened? Uh, yeah, NWA reached out to me, and they had actually reached out to me before the pandemic had even happened. But then we know what happened with COVID-19 and everything getting shut down, and so NWA went on its hiatus. But I got reached out to probably about a month before the tapings, and I'm pretty sure it was Nick Aldis who had kind of recommended me originally. So my hats off to him. And yeah, they just Pat Kinney reached out to me, who kind of runs talent relations there, and he asked me if I was interested. And I love everything NWA has done and what they represent. I love the old school feel to it. I love the grown men aspect to the NWA and their talent. And I don't know. I'm just personally, I'm a I love wrestling altogether. In general, but and new school wrestling is very innovative. You can't take anything away from that. But me, just personally, I'm a fan of a lot of the wrestling I grew up on. You know what I mean? Which is a little
Yeah.
bit more selling, a little bit more storylines, and a little bit more storytelling. So yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I jumped at it.
Yeah, because I remember when I reached out to you, and we started talking, and all of a sudden I see your name in the news, like, hey, Chris Adonis is jumping into NWA. I'm like, wait, what? What the hell? So it was definitely a
Yep.
big surprise for everybody in our little tight Twitter community, and of course for me too. I'm like, because there was no hints at it, right? Like there was no like drops of this is soon to come, and because I haven't followed the NWA for a little bit. I used to follow it all the time, but since it went away and since it came back, I've definitely got to get back into it again. But um, was there kind of like hints that you dropped along the way that that's where you were going to go, or did you kind of have no
Uh
idea where you were going to end up?
no, I mean I had no idea, I mean necessarily, I wasn't it's been a rough year. And if you weren't contracted with World Wrestling Entertainment or AEW, then, essentially you weren't working very much. So again, we've all had to kind of adjust to that. And, but, I didn't know what was going to happen, honestly. I think we're at a beautiful place now where, we're getting all the pro wrestling back. Society's starting to open up a little bit. So, it just I didn't know what was going to come my way. As far as I was concerned, I was still obviously going to take independent wrestling bookings whenever they come, whenever the situation is right and whatnot. But I was very ecstatic to have NWA reach out. I didn't know that they were starting back up when they did either, so that was a surprise to me. And then just for me, when they reached out, it's an opportunity, it's a platform, and let's be honest, you know, I haven't had a ton of great opportunities within the last 8 years in terms of pro wrestling. I did do Impact Wrestling and all that, but at 38 years old, you definitely want to play a platform that you can shine on, and that the wrestling community can see your work, and you can. It definitely installs a lot of drive in myself personally. So, you know, that's the story with that.
Yeah, one of the people in the chat actually just asked about what was it like working in Impact and Eli Drake.
Oh, it was awesome. Eli, I can't say enough things about LA Knight. That is, um, he's a guy. It's funny. He's a guy, and I'm not the only one to say this, but when you encounter him or you meet him initially, he kind of, for whatever reason, you just think, oh, that guy seems like a total ass or something. But then, you know, once you get to know him, you realize, oh, he's not, and he's actually one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. He's a hard-working talent. I really just in my time at Impact really admired his what's the word I'm trying to look for? He was very detail oriented as far as his work, and he was very much a perfectionist, and he paid very close attention to everything he did and made sure that you know that you know all the T's were crossed, all the I's dotted, all that kind of stuff. And I just really grew to appreciate his commitment to the business and his commitment to you know being the best he can be. Like he literally, when they say talk about the hardest worker in the room, that's Eli. But not only that, he's also as talented as he is. You know what I mean? As far as the talking, as far as just presence. And so for me, looking at him now after that experience with him in Impact, I'm just very excited to see him on NXT. I think this is a fantastic opportunity. It's about time. You know what I mean? Like that took a while.
Yeah.
That took a while for whatever reason, but it's great. And now I see he's shining bright. So yeah, just tremendous experience. Impact Wrestling on the whole was a good experience. It just the circumstances changed for me a little bit once Jeff Jarrett departed.
Yeah. And as I said to like Carlito before, like all you guys that did like the heel work back in the day in like WWE and even now too currently, like the goal is to get everybody to hate you. But as like now, and when I talked to Carlito, like back in the day, I couldn't stand Carlito because of me being a Cena fan and all this other stuff. But I was also a kid back then, so like getting to know the person behind the character, it's always fascinating to get their point of view from that. You know what I mean? But going to WWE, what got you started? Like, where did you start wrestling? Like, and how did you get into the E?
Well, I'll try to tell this story as original as possible because I've told it a lot, obviously. But for me, I was a lifelong wrestling fan. I was one of the biggest marks you could see. You know what I mean? Like I just obsessed about pro wrestling. I would, I'd buy all the magazines because you remember back in the day we had many of them. We didn't just have PWI. We had like I can't even remember the names of them, but there's like 4 or 5 different ones. But anyways, long story short, I was a huge mark. I freaking loved professional wrestling my whole life. And once I came to the age of like 14 or 15, we kind of had a career day in high school, and it made me start thinking about what I actually wanted to do, which led me to, well, what are you passionate about? What do you love? And it was very obvious. It was pro wrestling. You know what I mean? And I like most people, lifelong fans, had gone through my early stage of loving wrestling. And then I had a brief hiatus for a good 3 years, 1993 to 1995. I wasn't watching. But then when I came back in late 1995, I came back strong, man. And, from that point on, I was a lifer leading into, high school, and then making that decision in terms of, what is it I want to do with myself? And then, the first step was I started working out. Like I hadn't done any working out at all. I was a skinny kid. And I was doing backyard wrestling actually for a while. And then my mom had seen a videotape actually of the backyard wrestling we were doing. And she was so freaked out because we were taking these big bumps off the ladders onto grass, like backdrops off the ladders. It was insane. So she was like, if you're going to do this crazy shit, you really need to, we're going to just enroll you in wrestling school and you're going to get trained to do it properly. So, that led to that. And the school we found, we had a great school, Ultimate Pro Wrestling in Southern California, which has manufactured the likes of The Miz, John Cena, myself, and many others. Rick Bassman was the owner. He ran it. And it was a great place to train because, you had WWE eyes on you, and I started around this. Me and Cena started essentially like the same day.
Wow.
And but unfortunately, I was like 16 years old. I fractured my ankle, and I was injured severely, and I had to have surgery on that. So what I did is I took a couple of years off, and I really reapplied myself to the training and physical conditioning aspect, and came back at 18 years old, and then back to UPW, and pretty much got signed within a year of returning to training.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that part about the ankle thing.
Yeah.
And coming back from that strong and look at where you are now. That's incredible. Um,
Yeah, it's just a fracture, you know what I mean? But for the age of 16, that's a pretty, to have surgery is obviously not ideal.
yeah, yeah. Where did the master lock come from? Who the idea was that?
Well, it's more about why it was the idea. Like the time when I debuted, WWE was going through a phase of wanting to recondition the fans. I think they had really pushed the envelope as far as crazy things they were doing and physicality and whatnot. And I think it was taking a toll on the roster. So around the time frame when I debuted is when they were trying to kind of recondition the fans and get, things that are legitimate over again, such as the full Nelson. The full Nelson is a completely legitimate hold. If you apply it on someone and then you put pressure on the neck forward, it will literally make you pass out. It'll cut off blood flow to the brain.
Hmm.
So that was kind of the idea of it. The idea was to recondition the fans and to also just kind of take a couple steps back from all the craziness and legitimize simple stuff like the full Nelson, and they package it as the master lock, and that was the idea behind it. I mean, I even questioned it initially because again, watching wrestling your whole life, you're kind of, full Nelson kind of seems like it seemed like a little lackluster. I'm like, oh, don't I need something a little more flashy or a bump?
Right. Yeah.
But but again, I mean, if you market it properly, you put it on television every week, you have the right guy doing it, such as myself or now Bobby Lashley. People will buy it as legitimate.
Yeah, because it got over so well with the Master Lock challenge that you did every single few
Yeah,
weeks. And like,
yeah.
how was it doing that? Like, did they tell you, oh yeah, this person's gonna go out there and beat? Like, obviously, you went a long period of just nailing it every single week. With no one being able to break out of it for almost, wasn't it over like a year or something?
I'm not sure. I mean, I doubt that it. Well, yeah, it wasn't broken until I'm trying to think of when Bobby Lashley broke it, but I guess it was remained unbroken for a year and a half or something like that. So, because I mean, it was debuted in 2005, and then I think Bobby Lashley officially broke it in early 2007. So, yeah, it had a nice little streak to it going. It was the one thing I really had to protect. Nobody
Yeah.
could break the master lock. That was the idea.
And now Bobby Lashley uses the Hurt Lock, so it's kind of ironic how that kind of happened, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it makes sense in terms of the fact that Bobby being the one to break it, and then when you look at the physical stature
Yeah.
of Bobby Lashley, it makes sense. But it doesn't mean I wouldn't like to see a Master Lock versus Hurt Lock scenario.
There we go. Yeah, see, I think we would all like to see that.
I
So
hope so.
my thought, I saw almost all of them again. I rewatched a lot of them. What's your thoughts when they say, "All right, go out there and do the Master Lock Challenge on the Big Show"?
Oh man, it was like, can I even get a minute? I think we went over it at television that day to see if I could even get my arms around him, and he's just so broad that I was able to get my arms around him, but to legitimately hook it, I don't think we were able to do that. So I think we were actually playing around with ideas of different things I could use, like whether it be maybe I had a chain, you know what I mean, put one arm around and you got a chain, but I don't think that legitimately made sense. So yeah, I don't know. I don't, I could get it on Big Show, but again, to actually hook it and have it cinched, that's another story.
Yeah, yeah, because it definitely seemed like I don't know, because then you have to lift them out of the chair too, wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, you don't have to lift him out of the chair, but I mean, it definitely adds to the effect of it. But like, he's so big, you're not going to lift him up out of a chair. You're lucky to just get him in it, and then you actually what you want to do is somebody to pull out the chair from underneath him, and then just
Yeah.
have him bottom out. But yeah.
Anybody that you haven't done that challenge too that you wished you did or would love to do now, or besides obviously a rematch with Bobby Lashley,
Uh,
probably?
no, I mean, when you say that, I just think of somebody that like I would have liked to work that I would that I'll obviously never get a chance to, and that's like Andre the Giant. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like when I think of
Oh, that
if
would be
there's
good.
anybody I could have stood across the ring with, Andre just for the pure, just to feel the pure effect of his size and his, you know what I mean, what it would look like to like face off with a man that size. You know what I mean? But I mean, another guy, Bret the Hitman Hart would have been an awesome guy to do it with in terms of like sharpshooter versus master lock and all the creativity that could probably be, applied in that situation. So, yeah, I mean, these are just dream matches for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you had a lot of people that you obviously put in there, like big names like John Cena, Big Show, Carlito, all of them. But when you first started out doing the Master Lock Challenge, did you know it was gonna get down to doing that to? Like, did you know when it was gonna end? Did you know like how long it was gonna go
No,
for? No, it's just like,
no idea. I mean, I just knew that they were going to roll with it for a while, and that we were just building it, and then just all of a sudden we had. I didn't have any real particular program with anybody. They were just building the hold. And then all of a sudden, my first program is against Shawn Michaels. And that's when we did the big Master Lock Challenge that was the main event of Raw, of all things. And, that was just a really cool experience. I could have never imagined going into an angle with, the wrestler that I obsessed about, all growing up. So that was very cool.
a for real moment standing side. Yeah, that would do that to anybody. I think stepping in the ring now. But what was it like working with Jeff and Matt Hardy? Interesting question, Dalton. He wants to know what was it like working with Jeff and Matt Hardy.
I don't think I haven't got to work them as much as I'd like to. I've gotten to work Matt a little bit more than Jeff. Like I think with Jeff, I'm trying to think of how many times we've worked, man. It's probably only maybe less than a handful of times. But Jeff is just an awesome dude. I love his artistic personality, you know what I mean, and just everything that is Jeff Hardy, the essence, the aura of Jeff. And then Matt's one of the Good Brothers, the Good Brother crew. He's I've worked with him quite a bit, and just an awesome dude. I'll just say that um, I was working Matt in some of his return matches when he came back, or what when he worked with Edge and they did that
Yeah.
program when he came back. So they were working very stiff with each other. So I just remember when working Matt Hardy around that time, anytime he threw a strike, he was, you felt like you were in an MMA fight or something,
Oh boy.
like he was just, yeah, he was throwing it. But no, he's they're both just amazing dudes. I mean, the Hardy Boys, they're legends, and they're a couple of the good ones. You know what I mean? In
Yeah,
the
then he
business.
left WWE and interpreted himself again by being the whole broken character and coming back. Um,
Well, Matt, you can tell, man. Matt just has a love for pro wrestling, and he does everything he can to, reinvent himself, and he's constantly like thinking this out in terms of how, whether it be promos, in-ring work, evolving the character. You got to appreciate how much Matt puts into this business, and how, you can tell him, man. Like Matt cares, and anybody who's a pro wrestling fan should appreciate and respect that, I believe.
oh yeah, I got a chance to before they went back to WWE, they did the indie scene. They did what's called up in my area New England Wrestling. Don't know if you ever heard of it or not. It's Wrestling Under the Stars, and they literally were like 5 minutes from my house in a baseball field. Dre the King Lawler was there. Cody Rhodes was there. It was before he did the AEW thing. Anvil was there. A bunch of like legends and
That's awesome.
superstars were there, and they got to do their thing. And it was really cool to see because this is like right when the Broken stuff was coming out, and now seeing where that's become afterwards, like I will never forget that moment, especially that it was only 2 minutes from my house. Like normally I
That's
have to
pretty cool.
travel to the shows I would always go. So when wrestling was here I would always go to Albany, New York. That's where I always had to go to because that was the closest venue we had. But so being able to go down the road for 2 minutes, but they haven't done that in a while. Obviously because of
Didn't they
COVID,
have
but
didn't they have a Royal Rumble in Albany, New York? Was it like 1991 or something?
they might have. I know they did. They did the elimination chamber thing, New Year's resolution near there.
Oh, is that the one? That's the one I was in.
Yeah, with Cena and all that. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, were you
Cena won it.
there?
I wasn't there. I was too young at the time to do it, but I was watching it on TV though.
Ah,
I was watching it on TV.
ah,
No, the first
ah.
time I went to actually see a show, it was when Eddie Guerrero was teaming up with Rey Mysterio. I don't remember who they fought, but I remember that, and I remember,
SmackDown.
yeah, I remember seeing Carlito outside shoveling with his sling on and getting splashed by a car that drove by.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, he was out there shoveling snow, and the car just comes by, drove through a puddle, and splashes him. He's
Well,
out there
how
cursing it
did
out.
that really happen?
Yeah. It was just like a random like shot outside that they were showing, and he was outside just standing there.
Oh,
Obviously,
okay. So it was a produced segment.
yeah, it was a
Okay.
segment. It was a segment,
Okay.
and like
I thought you were saying it was a shoot. I'm like,
no,
what?
no, that would be interesting though. Like, oh hey, there's Carly. Let's go splash him. Don't happen, man.
Yeah.
So hey, are you looking to the future though? Like, are you interested in going to AEW? I know this question would have been better for before we all knew NWA, but I know you're focusing strictly on NWA, but would you like to end up at AEW or even back at the WWE one more run? Or
You know, you never say never to anything in wrestling. I mean, um, I'm not looking to AEW in terms of like, I'm not trying to hit up Tony Khan or send in a resume or anything for that matter. I mean, yeah, again, my focus is all on NWA, but I mean, you never say never. I'm 38 years old and I can still work. I can still go, probably better than I ever have. So, any opportunity that comes my way, I will entertain. And and it ultimately just comes down to no matter how much I'm trying to develop other passions in my life and do other things, wrestling is always going to be it. It's going to be my number one passion, my number one love. It just happens to be, it's also, it's been my job for the last 20 years. But so, for me, I just look at it like it would be stupid to say that you're not entertaining, the idea of any company in wrestling, whether it be AEW, WWE, ROH, Impact, any of that. You know what I mean? We're actually in a really fortunate point outside of the pandemic, obviously, where you have multiple platforms you can work, and they all feel a little different now. They all kind of have their different things going for them, and it's really, I mean, as a wrestling fan, I think this has to be a really awesome time for all you guys when you look at the streaming platforms. I mean, this is all stuff. I mean, I guess we've kind of established. I'm much older than you now, but this is stuff we didn't have growing up, man. Like, this is all we didn't have. We did have WWE and WCW when I was growing up, so I guess that was enough. But so again, I'm keeping an open mind towards anything, but all my attention now is obviously going towards NWA because I think for me personally, that is the best fit at this time. I mean, the NWA, the vibe, the feel, what they're trying to represent, what their collective mindset is the perfect place for a guy like me.
yeah, no, I feel that. And you mentioned with everything being virtual again, like uh, I mean, you've seen the Thunderdome, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine instead of having like the fans to feed off on how it must be with like just screens around the ring.
Well,
Uh,
I haven't gotten to perform in that. I mean, I think, the production of what they're doing is much better than the initial parts of the pandemic. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
what you're trying to do is just simulate what as close as you can to that feel of that energy of people being surrounded around people. And, the NBA did the virtual fan thing. And like, we're just making the best we can of the situation collectively. I mean, the world and entertainment and sports So, but yeah, there's no simulating it, man. Like, the hardest part for me about watching Carlito come back after a 10-year absence, and by the way, he did amazing, was just not getting the recognition from the fans and getting you can, as well as it went, you can only imagine how much appreciation and
Yeah.
love the WWE universe would have given Carlito, because I mean, this is a guy, a 10-year absence, somebody coming back after a 10 years absence doesn't come around all that often. Like, that's a super return. You know what I mean? Because most guys, if they go away and come back, it's a year, it's 2 years, 3 years tops, whatever. It's somewhere in that ballpark. It's not, but after 10 years, you just can imagine the Carlito chance would have been, deafening. And it would have just been, as cool as it was, it would have been even that much cooler. So, I mean, that's just the world we live in right now, we're dealing with. But it's looking like, I'm excited because it's looking like fans are starting to come back. You got WrestleMania, who's
Yeah.
bringing in, I don't know what it is, 45,000. I just found out the Staples Center is going to be allowing some fans back for Laker games, which is
Oh wow.
means a lot to me. So, and you miss the crowds, man. Nothing feels the same without hearing the audience react, hearing the audience boo, cheer, especially, with basketball, certainly, but, especially with professional wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, you really realize, I mean, I think we all knew the crowds were important, but, to not have fans there to be like blunt and, speak their minds and scream and yell and all that, like, that's such a huge part of what we do.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I stopped actually going into the Thunderdome and like participating in the Thunderdome is because like they always had somebody in your ear telling you how to react to things, and like I don't know, I would just rather do a live stream and do like a watch along and react the way I want to react. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, I get what you. I didn't even know that was a thing, but
yeah, there was a producer in
yeah,
your headset saying, "Oh yeah, we need big boos for this guy," or "Hey, big cheers for this guy," or it was just overly produced in my opinion. But
yeah, they're just trying to produce a television show, and
yeah,
that's what it
understandable.
comes down to, I guess.
But yeah, going to your point, yeah, and so many people wanted Carlito back too. Like that could have been the same with Drew McIntyre's title win too. Like if that was in front of fans at Mania last year, I could only imagine like the amount of noise that would have happened. Or
Yeah, yeah, that was the other thing. I mean, so outside of Carlito, the Drew McIntyre winning the title, and not being able to do it in front of a live crowd, I thought, that just, those are two guys I think I'm so highly on that, those things, hurt me essentially for them. You know what I mean? Because I've always been a big advocate for Drew. He's one of my favorite opponents, and we're dating back to like 2011. He's given me some of the best matches of my career. Physical dude, and I was just really happy to see him. Even though he didn't have the crowd last year, and luckily he'll have some people this year, but I was still obviously very happy for him, and I think that was well deserving.
yeah, and it definitely makes a difference too. Like I went to Mania 35. It's the first Mania I've ever been to, and just not being in that environment before and like watching it on TV is one thing, but like even I mean for you guys too, being in the ring, being surrounded by thousands upon thousands upon thousands, then going into like a football field and being in the ring, like it's a huge difference being in there. And I was up in the rafters too, so like all the noise we heard was ridiculous. I can only imagine what that was like in the ring itself.
Well, and just to go back to to what we were just saying and the follow up on that. I mean, that's kind of what we all do it for. Outside of even more so than being on television or producing all the different aspects of the business. The most fun thing you can do is to perform in the ring in front of people, and to hear the reactions, and know that they are appreciating what they're seeing, whether they're cheering or booing. You know what I
Right,
mean?
yeah.
Whatever it may be, that is the ultimate. I think for anybody who is a wrestler, or anybody who loves, being a professional wrestler or sports entertainer, I mean, that is it. It's all the main thing is doing it in the ring in front of a crowd that really appreciates what's happening in there.
Now you said you started out backyard wrestling and stuff. Have you ever heard of GTS wrestling?
Now,
So GTS wrestling is Grimm's Toy Show. There's a big YouTuber, and that's what they do. They do all that stuff, all that crazy stuff out in a wrestling ring outside in the backyard, and but he's doing it in front of millions of subscribers. So I mean, I guess there's kind of like that audience there too. But like as soon as you said that,
really,
that's where my mind went to like all these death matches that were happening over there, like light tubes and all that stuff. Um, but like I can only imagine what that would be like if he had a crowd. But I guess he kind of has a crowd digitally, but that just
where
immediately.
where are these shows happening?
New Jersey and on YouTube. They're mainly on YouTube.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's the age we live in now. I mean, I can only imagine when I was doing it, if we had the means of social media to
Yeah,
broadcast and stuff like that, which is, it's an amazing tool, even for something like that, but also for, all the various independent wrestlers throughout the world. I mean, now you have a place where you can broadcast video or you can put clips on Instagram. So, you got places that you can advertise, whether you be a promotion or wrestler, which is one of the benefits of social media. There's a lot of pros and cons to this new age we live in, but that is definitely a pro for all the up and coming promotions and talent.
so my buddy, he's from the UK. His name is Johnny Bates. He's a young one. Well, kind of. He's 15 years old, but he's just starting out. He does wrestling. He trains and stuff. What advice would you have for someone like him who's looking to
How old is
break
he?
out? 15.
Finish school is my advice. You pursue your pro wrestling dream, but just finish school. You don't need to rush it. Like, I did, when I was getting into pro wrestling, I was so anxious to get in as young as possible, and I neglected a lot of other things in my life. So for him, just my advice would be, finish school, do all of that stuff, do all the maturing and get some life experience and continue your wrestling training. But just make sure you take care of all of that so that, when you get there, you're there at a mature age and you're ready for everything that comes to you. And also, there's some good schools out there in the UK. I mean, I know my buddy Stephen Flutter, who runs Preston City Wrestling, runs a school out there. So that's a place you can. I'm not telling you can't start training. Go ahead and start training maybe at 16, 17 if you really want, but just don't neglect all the other things in your life, being that school and whatever else in your pursuit.
Yeah, that's great advice too. Because I know he did some training in ring a little bit, but like I mean,
It's
not
very young.
much.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's just if you another piece of advice is you at your age, you're so young that if anything, I would probably focus on your physical conditioning, learn how to work out properly and all that stuff. Because for me, I started around his age. I was about 15 or 16 and I got hurt. And then I realized, oh, this is something better to revisit when I'm 18 or older. So he can start training, but a good first step would just to be get familiar with the gym, start working out, and then start seeking a school at some point, and you can start learning fundamentals. Just learn how to lock up, how to headlock, how to do all the fundamental stuff. But you don't want to turn all your attention to pro wrestling and pro wrestling training when you're at that age. You know what I mean? Because you're super, super young. It's best to kind of develop these other things and finish these other things in pursuit.
Someone wants to know if we'll get another flex off with Brian Cage.
I can't. Brian Cage is just next level now, man. Like I cannot do a pose off with Brian Cage at this point. I think he's about like 280 pounds. The guy's unbelievable. So, but maybe one day.
Yeah. So what do you think of like the obviously going back to Mania last year, there were some matches that couldn't be like live matches. They were the pre-taped and cinematic. What were your thoughts on that? The cinematic stuff.
Let me just before I even go into that, just say I didn't see either one of them entirely, but I saw a majority of it, and I like the Undertaker AJ Styles, the look of what they did and stuff. I think again it was it's doing something different based upon the circumstances of what was going on in the world, and you can't do a regular, trying something different. We always hear about, Vince McMahon, and, it's all about the stories, and he wants to, he approaches these things like movies. So what they were is kind of like mini movies. And I like the Undertaker AJ one. I thought, I just, with the Cena one, it was weird because that like Cena essentially lost, but he didn't legitimately really lose, did he?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, kind of what to make of the Fiend one. I mean, it was fun how they did Cena and the NWO thing, and they revisited that stuff. There was a lot of a very nostalgic feel to that, but in the end, I don't know if it accomplishes anything for the Fiend. I don't know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but because just the way the finish goes down, it's just it's so different from anything we'd ever seen, and I think it was making lemonades out of lemon, essentially.
And what's your thoughts on a character like the Fiend, like an unstoppable force going up again, like as an opponent wise and as a fan wise watching, like if you're going to see the Fiend every week or every other week or every show, like like, oh, okay, he's not gonna lose this time. Oh, he's not gonna lose this time. Like I like him because I'm a horror guy, but I know a lot of people that don't like him because they're gonna say it's too predictable. Every match he has, he's not gonna lose.
Well, I don't know about that part of it, but what I will say is I think, first of all, it's a really cool look, the whole look of and the presentation of it. And it just kind of reminds me, I think in the wrestling business, you kind of need to have some of these characters, like these extreme kind of characters. It kind of just reminds me of a kind of a new school version of a Kane or something like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, you don't, I mean, what do you want your pro wrestling to be? You know what I mean? You want it to be just a bunch of regular guys with regular names, or do you want to have, the eccentric kind of personalities and characters? And I mean, quite frankly, probably the best case scenario is a mix of both. But I mean, still, that means you need to have both. And I think the Fiend is kind of filling that role in this day and age of a guy of the, that same cloak of the Kane, Undertaker, all those kind of really strong character wrestlers that with a presence and a feel.
And always innovating and adapting, as we saw recently when he came back. Like that
New
new mask
look,
he
right?
has. Yeah.
No, it's freaky.
I ended up buying the replica. It's gonna be shipping it sometime in June, I heard. But I'll have
That's
one.
cool.
I'll have one.
That's
Well, what are
cool.
his thoughts on JBL going into the Hall of Fame?
JBL,
Yeah.
I think it's deserving. I think if somebody's asking me that, they're probably asking because, a lot of people have had instances with JBL in the past, but he's to me, he seems like a deserving Hall of Fame wrestler. You know what I mean? I don't know how many times he held the world title. He really, I wouldn't say that if his career just stopped at the APA, but
Yeah.
based upon everything he did kind of after that, and even despite just being a rough guy in the locker room to us young guys coming up, what can you say? I mean, I'm not going to lie and say I don't think he deserves it if he seems like a justified Hall of Famer.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like I said, I grew up watching. I was born in '93, so I watched from like kind of like the '98 to 2000s, really, like when the hurricane, like I said to you before off camera, hurricane got me into it. When he came to KB Toys and met all the kids. My mom worked there, and got us all into it. And then like I started getting into hurricane, liking him. Had the green hair, had the mask, and then somehow adapted to John Cena's rapping gimmick. Um, but yeah, if it wasn't for the hurricane coming to that her job and meeting all the little kids, I don't think I would ever really. I might have eventually turned it on, but that back
That's very cool.
that's when
He's
that
one of the
started.
Shane Helms is one of, and I don't know, you probably follow his social media, but I mean,
Oh
he's
yeah,
absolutely one of the funniest guys going. You know what I mean? He's just hilarious, and I think that's just a really cool story. I'm sure he'd love to hear that.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And like I said, I met him at Mania when we went to Mania 35. I was going to Access to meet Kurt Angle. Like I've never been to Access before, so I didn't know that midway through the times that you go that they switch out everybody. So I was in a line to meet Kurt Angle, and then all of a sudden they all switched out, and everybody that was in line got to meet somebody else. And so the person that got switched with was him, Liv Morgan, Ruby Riott, and Jeff Hardy. And I'm like, well, I came here to meet Kurt Angle. I guess I'm meeting the Hurricane, Jeff Hardy, Liv Morgan, and Ruby Riott now. But um, so that's when we got up to the front line. I mentioned, hey, look, I took the picture with you like over 12, 17 years ago. And now I'm taking an R1 now. So we did like a before and after kind of picture with him. Same with Jeff Hardy, too. Like I said, I met him when we did New England Under the Stars. And then a couple years later, I'm meeting him again at Access. And so I have this title belt behind me here. I had him sign it, and he just like was going off. I'm like, "What are you doing, Jeff?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just doodling." He took like half of the belt, just
That's
drawing.
Jeff for you, man. That's Jeff, man. He's an artist. He's
Oh yeah,
he's
very
Rembrandt.
talented, very talented, and like that belt was signed by everybody that I met Access in. Friends that I met along the way from like Peru. I worked with a company that they did where they brought people from Peru over just to help out and learn about America, stuff like that. And like I got so close with a couple of them, became friends with them, and then I had them sign the belt because they became good friends. You know what I mean? And they were wrestling fans and made their day seeing a replica belt and being on the belt with names such as Jeff Hardy and like the Hurricane and all these guys. It made their like week or lifetime. You know what I mean?
That's
Um,
cool.
but the first name to go on that belt was Sean Pierce. Right after he left the WWE, he came to a mall near us and immediately found out about it. I'm like, we went to Heroes Hideout immediately and called out of work that day. Went to meet the Perfect 10, and I said, "Hey, can you sign this?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "At least you have one more belt than I've ever had."
That's
He was a
good.
good dude too. Like it's like going back to what I said earlier. It's really cool seeing the people behind the characters, um, in knowing that they're decent human beings and not like people that like spit in people's faces all the time or want to break somebody's ankle or like
Just playing characters, brother.
yeah, man. And like growing up as a kid, that didn't really connect until I mean obviously teenage years, but especially like when you had like people doing like inferno matches and all this other stuff back in the day, and uh, it's crazy. It's crazy how times have changed too, though. Like you go from having all these crazy matches, like the OG original Elimination Chamber to the one we have now. Um, Big time difference in my opinion. Like with the padding on the ground and the metal grates are kind of gone. Like you
Oh,
were you
really?
were
I
in
didn't.
it.
I didn't even. I didn't even know they did that. They changed the structure.
Oh yeah, they changed it to it's not round anymore. It's like this little cube thing, and they said that they did it to change like the weight, I guess, from hanging from the ceiling. But yeah,
Mm.
all the metal grates you would land on the outside became like mats.
Oh
So
yeah, those things were stiff. I mean, I didn't take a bump on them, but I can just tell you from being in the match and walking on them. I mean, they were, you know, there was grating. I mean, just straight up. You know what I mean? Like if you fall on that, you might as well be falling on edged metal. So
yeah,
it was pretty rough. But I mean, luckily for me, I didn't really have to. I think Sean and Carlito took the most bumps on that thing in that particular match, and it wasn't because I didn't. I would have done whatever they told me to. I was just doing what was told, and I was, Kane and me were, I think, probably the bigger guys in the match. So I guess we that kind of saved us from taking as much punishment.
but going into it, like, what was it like being in that match? Like, it's I'm sure one of the things you'll never end up forgetting, being in some structure like that.
It was cool. I mean, it was a really notable day for me because I also turned 22 years old that day. And, one of the biggest matches I'd ever been in, and main event of a pay-per-view. You know, it's just when you go into matches like that, at least for me at that point in my career, you just kind of don't know what to expect. You're used to doing, you know, one-on-one matches, tag team matches, but then when you start doing these you know, tornado matches and elimination chamber matches, it's kind of a whole different animal. You know, like what you're doing in the ring is still the same, but you know, it just has a very different feel, obviously. So you know, that part was a little overwhelming, but when I look back on it, man, I feel like it was a pretty damn good elimination chamber match. I think I like the story of it in terms of Carlito and me kind of in cahoots and the underdogs of the whole thing, and
Right.
us
Yeah.
trying to like, you know, get each other's back so that we can go as far as possible and win it. And then Carlito ends up backstabbing me, and then John Cena wins, and then you know the big kicker is at the end. You know, like when Edge comes
Edge
out
comes out. Yeah.
and cashes out the Money in the Bank, which you know I've told people before we had no idea was even going to happen.
Oh,
We didn't even know
really?
that was going to happen.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
we were just as surprised as everybody else. And the one thing I remember from that day, you know, Carlito obviously is a second generation wrestler, has a lot more experience than me, and he was saying that you know, that day he was voicing it. He was saying, you know, something about this finish doesn't, you know, he's saying this finish just doesn't add up. Like, really, this is going to be the finish? Just Cena, you know, rolling up Carlito? That's going to be it? And you know, he had referenced that a couple of times, and then you know, fast forward later, and we're watching the whole Edge thing pan out in front of us, and I was like, oh wow, you were right. You know, like that's, you know, there, you know, you didn't say anything, but you were right to question that.
I was so mad when I saw that. Like, that's like I was a Cena fan at that time, so I was like, "Hey, he made it. He won the thing. He went through it." Then Edge music says, "I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding."
No, no.
Well, then I gotta ask, like, I can only imagine if they told, like, Carlito, okay, yeah, so you're actually gonna be the one that wins, but then Edge is gonna cash in on you. Like, I can only imagine, like, of course you're gonna do it because that's what they tell you to do, but I can only sense that there would be that, like, you finally win the big one, and then it gets immediately taken away. Like, there's some superstars that that's happened to, like, where they win the big title and then immediately get it taken away from, like, Daniel Bryan. It happened to him when Triple H pedigreed him, and out comes Randy Orton right after he won it. SummerSlam, I believe it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point of that Money in the Bank thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is to be able to capitalize at the most inopportune time for your opposition, being whether they just finished a match or you know they're passed out or whatever. You know what I mean? The person with the Money in the Bank can cash that in, and you know it's made for in some instances some unlikely champions.
And then TNA had their Feast or Fired matches that they did. I remember those.
Yeah.
Um, talking
And now
about
now AEW has the Reach for the Brass Ring
yeah,
match too. So
I
the
saw
brass
that.
ring match,
Somebody put
pretty funny.
a picture of Sonic the Hedgehog on top of the ladder, reaching for
Oh my
the
God, that's funny. Yeah, because it looks like one of the rings from the
yeah.
game.
Speaking of Jeff Hardy, what are your thoughts on Will the Wisp character? Somebody wants to know.
Who?
The Will the Wisp character that Jeff does.
Is that recently he's been
No,
doing
he
that?
did
Because I
it
haven't.
in TNA where he put that mask on and had the umbrella.
You know what? I can't say I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I've seen it. Nope.
Yeah, it's a darker version of Jeff. They started kind of teasing it a little bit on WWE, but kind of went in a different path, I guess.
Huh. I'll
But
keep a lookout for that.
I would like to see, if anything, if we ever have one more Master Lock Challenge, regardless of it being with Bobby Lashley, because I watched that back and that slap you gave him.
Wow.
I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
if it
funny.
was planned or not, but you
Oh
definitely
yeah.
leaned into it, it seems.
Yeah, yeah. I remember whenever, you know, the few times I have watched that back, whenever I watch it, I just that when I see that part, I just start busting up. Only because, you know, to slap a guy like Bobby Lashley like that in the back of the head, a guy as physically imposing and as dominant and who legitimately can just beat the hell out of you. It's just nice guy, but I mean, it's pretty ballsy and it just makes me chuckle a bit.
Yeah, so I would like to see in the future like a Master Lock Challenge with you obviously and Brock Lesnar.
Oh wow, that'd be interesting.
Like,
Yeah, I've barely had any interactions with Brock Lesnar. It's been interesting. He was on SmackDown, and then he left right as I kind of entered the company, and then he re-entered the company after my second departure. So I mean, I just haven't had much interactions with him. But man, that guy is a another physical specimen, a complete mutant.
yeah, and he definitely gets the crowd. Like, I was there at Money in the Bank, like right after Mania, and when he out of nowhere ended up showing up and winning the thing, and he plays that heel card so well. Everybody was just going nuts because he wasn't even in the match. Now, all of a sudden, he shows up and boom, he wins it.
You know, it's
I gotta
crazy.
ask, somebody wants to know: are you a horror fan, like movie genres?
Uh, I, uh, I mean, I like everybody, a lot of other people. I watched some Halloween and Friday the 13th growing up. I did watch the best movie I've seen in the last couple of years was actually a horror flick. I think it was called The Invisible Man.
Yeah,
And I thought that was actually a pretty good kind of, I'm pretty sure it was a horror genre type movie. But it's not typically my favorite genre. I mean, and for me personally, I think my favorite genre would be the action movies and the, Marvel and, even sci-fi, RoboCop, Terminator, like all that kind of stuff really kind of gets me going.
yeah. Well, for me, like I said before, big horror movie fan. Name's
I
Jason.
can tell just looking
Yeah.
at all that stuff.
Well, this is just like every year we put out tons of stuff on for Halloween. We usually have to set up in like mid-September to start prepping stuff because we have so much stuff downstairs in my basement. But we do it for the entertainment purpose of it as well. Like, people know our house and show up specifically for all the stuff we have. And
Where do the Scream movies fall in the horror genre in terms of where their stance? It can't be very high.
the screen, the Scream movies. Yeah, no,
But they
they're
were hot. They were hot
yeah.
movies for a minute. Like everybody was seeing those, but I can't imagine if you're a legitimate horror genre person that you would rank Scream very high. Like, who is the guy in the horror genre you think amongst most fans? Would it be like Freddy Krueger, or is it Jason, or is it somebody I'm not even Hellraiser?
For me, I mean, yeah, it's those two, the Jason and Michael Myers, and
Yeah,
obviously like the original Jason movies, not like when he goes
yeah.
into freaking space.
Oh my God, ridiculous.
But
Yeah.
you have the Scream movie. It's just something about the killer just like on the phone screaming "What's up" to everybody. Like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be killing these people. You're just like interrogating them, and now you're gonna be talking on the phone. Like, I don't know.
Case
To
in
me,
point. Yeah,
to
yeah.
me, it's
It's
kind
a
of
little
like.
too. Yeah, it seems like a little too. I don't know. I don't know what the word is, but that's what I kind of imagine from it.
But
You
I
know,
do play like I don't know if you're into video games much, but I have a separate YouTube channel that I just do. It's called Christian Maniacs Gaming, and that's where I just do gaming every single day. I have a couple of people that we met randomly in public lobbies, and we all stream, and it's a ghost hunting game, pretty much. It's called Phasmophobia. And yeah, your goal is to basically find out what type of ghost you're dealing with in the house, and find out all the evidence, and then not get killed by the ghost when it hunts you. And like
that's pretty cool.
it has some elements, like they use real items that you see on shows, like you use EMFs, you use um, ghost boxes, and it picks up your voice. Like, the game can hear you, so like it can respond to, like, if you're asking a question. And it's definitely a horror game. Like, they'll have, like, you'll be in a room and something will be like thrown at you or knocked over, or light will turn on, or you'll hear something step in.
That
And
sounds fun.
yeah, it's a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and we play it like every night at 11 o'clock at night until, like, I don't know, 2 a.m. So that's when, like, I'm just waiting for this thing behind me to start moving one time, because it does move, but normally when I can control it. But I'm just waiting for it to.
It's gonna come to life.
Yeah, man. Like, I'm just waiting, watching, just like over my shoulder. Like, are you here? But yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
type of
do
stuff.
I do love gaming though, but I haven't tried those. I haven't tried that particular game, although it sounds actually really cool. But
Yeah.
I coincidentally just got a PS5 recently,
Oh
courtesy
wow.
of
Yeah.
Mister Shelton Benjamin. So,
Oh wow. Wow.
but, but I do a lot of NBA 2K. So
NBA.
I know there's a lot of cool games, probably just like the one you just pointed out. You know, Call of Duty, all that stuff. But NBA 2K is my go-to. I just love that game.
See the game. So Phasmophobia is on Steam. It's a PC game. Um,
Yep.
but on PS, I didn't get the PS5 yet. I'm still stuck at the PS4, but I haven't really played a lot of it
Well,
anymore.
they're impossible to get. I mean, shoot, I gave up on
Yeah.
getting it. I was lucky to have a friend with access.
Yeah, my friend who I think interviewed you a long time ago. Her name is Luge PS3. I think she interviewed you like long time ago. She's a big YouTuber as well. She gets invited to all like the 2K events, um, and she was having a hard time finding it too in Jersey
Yeah,
like or New York City. She was like every time she would go in, it would always be sold out.
it's impossible.
And then like you go online and they're charging like thousands of dollars. Like,
Mhm.
so you're like big into the NBA. I'm assuming you're choosing the Lakers then, huh?
That's my team, man. I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised. I bleed purple and gold, going back to Magic Johnson, and I even host or not host, but co-host the Lakers Nation podcast, which does a post game show after every Lakers show. It's actually hosted by Trevor Lane, and yeah, man, I have a lot of fun with that. It's my kind of my little hobby outside of my business, which is pro wrestling. I love basketball.
Right. What about football or anything like that? Kind of.
More just a casual watcher of football. I watch some. Obviously, I watch the Super Bowl, but I mean,
Yeah.
I have no real allegiance to any team.
See, for me, like, and I get a lot of flack from it too. Like, I'm in Massachusetts, and of course we have the Patriots over here. But I'm like every time that they're on or they're like winning, like I have to deal with Patriots stuff all the time, and especially where I work. I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan because I'm from New York, so I'm like I gotta deal with all that. Like every time they
Yeah.
lose a Super Bowl or they lose a big game, it's like oh my god, everybody has to take off work for the next 2 days. I'm like, uh, really?
Jeez.
But for basketball, I don't know. I'm kind of going towards the Bulls on basketball. Might be because of Jordan. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just where I grew up playing like NBA Jam. Like I have. I don't think I showed Carlia this. I don't even know where it is at this point. But I just moved. Like I said, I've just moved into this house. My old apartment we were in. I have like the original Genesis. Nintendo, not Nintendo. Yeah, the Sonic or Sega Genesis, and I have NBA Jam for that.
That's cool.
You remember that game?
Oh yeah.
With the sound effects, like yeah, from downtown. You can't forget that.
Yep. He's on fire. Yep.
So if you were into wrestling, you would be a basketball player. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know if I have the skill for that. Honestly, I couldn't even begin to tell you. I mean, for me, it was wrestling so early on.
How long do you think you would be wrestling for? Like, because you could do stuff that's not in wrestling. Like, you could do like manager work or do like
Yeah,
commentary.
who's to say? I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure I'll still be active wrestling for a few more years, but after that, it would be nice to be involved in the producing aspect in terms of matches and whatnot, or even training younger guys, helping out with that. So, that's some of the stuff I'm pondering now. Just kind of what other ways can I contribute to the business? What other ways can I make a living at the business?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier Nick Aldis.
Yep.
So we were back when they were doing like the Carneyland stuff. I don't know if you were watching that the product at the time or not. Like beginning of the pandemic, they had to do something. They changed it up a little bit. They were doing this thing on Patreon where you can become part of their little Carneyland thing that they were doing, and you'd be able to talk to some of the wrestlers doing like a one-on-one. Well, it's supposed to be one-on-one, but so many people did it, and one of them was with him, and I happened to be there, and he actually recognized my name from another guy who does reactions on YouTube. His name is Wrestling Days, big in the UK, and he would pop in to his chats and stuff and see me like do donations or say something or whatever. And he asked me, he's like, "Aren't you the guy from the Wrestling Days chat, that Christian Maniac?" So I'm like, yeah, like that to me blew me away. Like I've never once thought in a million years he would know me at all. Um, but then I immediately, all my credibility I had for that went down the toilet because then they were talking about later in it, like, who would you want to see challenge for the title? And I, I said my buddy Ziggy Dice. He's like, can we mute this guy? And they actually muted me. So,
That's funny.
because yeah, I am pretty good. I was good friends with Ziggy Dice. I'm sad he kind of left the company there, but it'd been cool to see Ziggy and Masterpiece go 1-on-1.
Yep.
But yeah, moving forward to NWA, who do you see as like? I know you just had that James Murdoch match, but who do you see going forward facing off
Trevor
against
Murdoch.
Trevor Murdoch? Yes, my bad. James Storms who I was thinking
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, I don't know, man. There's plenty of talent, man, and I'm pretty early on, and I'm a heel, so I'm just trying to think of that aspect. I mean, Aaron Stevens is a guy. We came up in the business together, and he's a guy I'm very fond of. So I'd love to go in there and dance with him a little more. And there's a couple of guys I'm thinking of. Obviously, is Nick Aldis and Bram Thomas Latimer. Two great talents, but I mean, that's not going to happen obviously anytime soon because we're all in cahoots with each other. So, but I mean, there's a lot of good potential matchups to get out of this thing. So, I look forward to whether it be, Aaron Stevens or more matches with Trevor Murdoch, who we already just came off some good ones, and whoever else kind of comes into the fray.
You said you mentioned being a heel. Heel compared to being a face, which do you prefer? I know I asked Carlito that, but
Heel's more fun.
it's easier to get booed than cheered, I believe, right?
Well, it's not even about that. It's just more about the fact that as a heel, you can kind of you have much more freedom to do whatever you want. And you can, when you're a baby face, you have to work within certain parameters of being a baby face because that's just how it goes. So that's why.
And there hasn't been many times where you've been faces in your runs in WWE, right? I think maybe
short time when I came back for a while, but I mean the Masterpiece character essentially was a heel character, and it's better played on that side of the fence, being a heel.
That music you had too, right?
yeah, it's good.
Did you like the music that you had at the beginning, or?
Yeah.
You had the fireworks, the sparklers going.
Just like anything else, it grew on me more and more over time.
Yeah, and then they changed it.
Well, I asked them to because we were having me work as a baby face, and I just kind of felt like the slower theme wasn't the most conducive theme for that. But looking back, I mean, that original theme will always be the better theme because it was much more personalized for the character. And then the theme they used for me as a baby face was good, but it was much more of a kind of generic theme. So it's not as distinctive when you hear it.
So one of my last questions I have for you is, obviously, you're friends with Carlito. What was it like to be able to do the Master Lock Challenge with him? Like the spotlight was on just you guys right there.
Well, I mean, our friendship has developed more over time. I mean, we were friends even back then when we were working together, but I mean, throughout the years, we've become, I think, closer. So, when I was doing it with him originally, it didn't stand out as any big particular moment. Like, oh, I'm out here with my best friend and we're doing doing this piece of business together. So, but the time when I did work with Carly, it was a lot of fun though. Still, I mean, that's where our friendship started. Was I met him in OVW, but then we started writing together, and then coincidentally around that same time is when we started doing teaming together on television and stuff. And it was great. It was just it was so easy with him, like the way we kind of were able, I was able to feed off of him and play off of each other. And it made for some kind of really good, entertaining stuff. And, I just think we had a very good chemistry. And like we always look back at it now when we always kind of thought it would have been nice if we would have been able to kind of let that go for a little longer and, potentially have won the tag titles and whatnot around that time frame, just because, it's kind of working well for that point in time. But, like a lot of other things, it got, they pulled the plug on it maybe a little too early.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see you guys going at it again in a wrestling ring at any given time. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
Well, you never say never. We'll see.
You guys ever just like try to do like just messing around, just the Master Lock Challenge just on off time?
Never,
No.
never. No, I mean, Carly, like, well, I'd say this for most people in the business, but I know specifically for Carly and me, I mean, we do not, we try to not do anything physical outside of what we do in the ring and then what we do in the gym. So
Yeah.
there's no playing around and grabbing each other in headlocks or anything like that. Nope.
All right, man. Hey, I appreciate you showing up. Is there any questions you have for me? I usually always like to turn it around. I know you asked about that once, but
I got one question for you. What in your mind is the best year in the professional wrestling business for your fandom? What is the year
oh boy,
you identify as the year that really solidified you, or this is your favorite year in professional wrestling?
I want to say, I don't
Because
know.
I'll tell you this: you were pretty young, but
Yeah,
my favorite years in professional wrestling were when I think actually it was 1997. So
'97,
you were
4.
only
Yeah,
like 4 years old at that time, but I'll tell you why. That year had the best mix of, Bret the Hitman Hart doing the heel Canada
yeah,
thing. I thought that was amazing. You had Stone Cold transitioning into Stone Cold. You had heel HBK, and it was just this, pot of awesome things just all cooking up at the same time that eventually led to the Attitude Era, which we all know what that was. So, but
yeah,
what do you
yeah.
say? What do you say?
Definitely early 2000s. But
That's
to
very
pick
vague,
a,
man. That's very vague.
I would say to pick a certain year, because after watching the product for over 17 years now, it's definitely not like it used to be, obviously, but um, I going back to the Elimination Chamber match that year, I did like it that year. I liked Cena. I kind of liked Edge a little bit, but not really to the
Well,
point. But
actually, if Cena was your guy, it probably has to be that two, maybe around when I was there, coincidentally, around that 2005, 2006 range, because I think that's when Cena kind of, that I think where his peak kind of
where
started
he
around
wasn't
that
getting
time frame.
booed and the T-shirts not getting thrown back at him, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, he had a little. Well, I mean, even while I was up there, he was working with Kurt, and the fans weren't always favorable in their reaction. I mean, but what it comes down to in wrestling is generating a reaction.
but I
So
also
even if
liked
it's
it
not,
too. When I actually started going to the shows too, like one of the last years Punk was in the business, I got to see him.
no.
And got to be like ringside for that. So I mean that kind of plays it part of it too. But like I the once it went PG, I know that kind of turned it off for a lot of people. But um, that kind of air like. I like when you were doing the Master Lock challenges. Like I was digging that kind of stuff. Um, something that you don't see often anymore. Except that I hated when they did like the anonymous general manager thing with Hornswoggle.
Ah, all right.
That kind of
That
setting.
answers that.
But like anything before then, like I was pretty cool. But like I didn't get a chance to see like the Attitude Era like fully. But I mean, going on when I was watching it on the network, I could obviously go back and watch it. But like I did miss out on like big moments like with The Rock and Stone Cold and all that stuff. But I grew up like
You're
having
so
like
young.
JBL,
You're
JBL, the
so
wrestling
young.
god, being brought up and having the cabinet and tossing the U.S. title in the trash can and laying it on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
All
kind of
right.
worked. But I didn't like him either. But so what's your favorite moment then? looking back in your career?
Uh, Working WrestleMania or working against Sean.
Yeah.
Where those two things will always stand out to me.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And well, and more to come, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah,
More to come. Well, hey man, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, we look forward to seeing what you do in NWA.
awesome, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no worries. All right, guys,
All
thanks
right.
for watching, and we will see you guys in the next interview. Take care. Bye bye.